This time, the Nobel evening impressed not with novelty, but with familiarity. A gown we had already seen, a tiara known for being difficult, and one quiet trail of jewels leading far beyond Sweden. There were no random choices here, only pieces with memory, character, and a past. So let us look at them closely and try to read this evening step by step, as a text written not in words, but in jewels. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. December in Stockholm is always a time of magic. The snow, the darkness of the Nordic winter, and then, suddenly, the blazing light of the concert hall and the Blue Hall at City Hall. It is the 10th of December, the Nobel Prize ceremony of 2025, and for those of us who follow the Swedish royal family, this night is the crown jewel of the calendar. It is the moment when the heavy iron doors of the Bernadotte vaults swing open, and history is brought out into the light. This year, however, the glittering procession felt less like a fashion show and more like a tender embrace of the past. As King Carl XVI Gustaf and Queen Sylvia led their family out, we saw Crown Princess Victoria, Prince Daniel, Prince Carl Philip, and Princess Meline with Christopher O'Neill. But you might have noticed one significant absence in the family lineup. Princess Sophia was not among the ladies in white tie this evening. The palace confirmed she remained at home, caring for little Princess Inez, who arrived just this past February. We certainly missed her bright smile, but family duties, of course, come first. But for the ladies who did attend, the evening was a triumph of memory over novelty. Have you ever opened an old family album and felt that sudden rush of nostalgia when you recognize a dress worn by a mother, now worn by a daughter? That is exactly the atmosphere the Swedish royals created that night. It was a masterclass in what I like to call royal recycling, not out of necessity, but out of respect for their own history. Crown Princess Victoria didn't just choose a gown, she made a statement about continuity. She appeared in a striking black and white creation by Jacques Zender, the very same dress Queen Sylvia wore to this ceremony 31 years ago, back in 1994. It was a touching tribute, bridging 3 decades in a single glance. And she wasn't alone in revisiting the archives. Both Queen Sylvia and Princess Meline chose to re-wear the magnificent gowns we first admired during the King's Golden Jubilee in 2023. It gives one a sense of stability, doesn't it? In a fast-changing world, there is something comforting about seeing these treasured pieces again. But, as always, it is the jewelry that truly speaks to us. The event was a showcase of transformation and endurance. So, pour yourself a cup of something warm and let's look closer at these treasures. We aren't just seeing diamonds and emeralds, we are reading the stories of the women who wear them. It is only right that we begin with the Queen herself. Queen Sylvia has been the anchor of these ceremonies for decades, and on this occasion, she was the very definition of regal stability. She shimmered in a gown of deep ochre yellow satin, a creation by Georg et Arend. As we noted earlier, this is the same gown she chose for the King's Golden Jubilee banquet in September 2023. Seeing it again allows us to really appreciate the details we might have missed the first time. Specifically, that bodice, encrusted with multicolored crystals. By bringing this specific dress back to the Nobel stage, she isn't just recycling fashion, she is subtly keeping the celebratory spirit of the Jubilee alive, weaving that milestone into the tapestry of the event. But it was her choice of headpiece that truly commanded attention. She wore Queen Sophia's tiara, often called the 9-prong. It is one of the most majestic pieces in the Swedish vaults, a literal wall of light composed of 580 diamonds forming foliage and arabesques, with those distinctive 9 diamond points reaching upwards like a sunburst. The history of this piece is quite fascinating because it wasn't always this towering diadem. It actually began its life much smaller, likely as a diamond comb worn by Queen Louise in the 1860s. It was her sister-in-law, Queen Sylvia, who had the vision to remodel it in the 1870s, transforming it into the majestic, wide tiara we see today. It passed down the line, eventually becoming a favorite of Queen Louise in the mid-20th century, before finding its way to Sylvia. It looks magnificent, doesn't it? But here is a little secret about this piece. It is notoriously difficult to wear. Unlike modern tiaras that might have a bit of flex, this base is rigid and unyielding. In fact, back in 1976, during her very first year as queen, Sylvia confessed that it dug painfully into her scalp during the long Nobel ceremony. And yet, look at her today. Over the last 50 years, she has worn this difficult tiara more than 100 times. She learned to tame it, patting the base, adjusting the angle, regulating it until it fit perfectly. To me, this is the perfect symbol of her role as queen. She took on a heavy, rigid responsibility, a burden that was undoubtedly uncomfortable at first. But she carries it with such consistent grace that the weight seems weightless. That is the mark of a true matriarch. While the diamonds of the tiara provided the dazzling framework, the true color of the evening came from the historic Bernadotte emeralds. Now, you might notice she chose not to wear the famous necklace from this suite for the ceremony. Likely a wise choice to let the intricate crystal-encrusted neckline of her gown take center stage. But make no mistake, even just the brooch and earrings carry the full weight of the dynasty. You see, this entire parure has an incredible origin story. The central piece, that necklace she often wears, wasn't always jewelry for a queen. Originally, it was a belt, an écharpe or sash, created for the very first Bernadotte king, Karl XIV Johann, and recorded in the inventory way back in 1844. Men's fashion was quite different then, wasn't it? I always chuckle when I think of how this suite evolved. It is said that Queen Sylvia, finding the belt a bit boring, supposedly used simple sewing thread to stitch the rosettes together to turn the belt into a necklace. Can you imagine the nerve? Taking a needle and thread to priceless royal emeralds. It was a risky move, but it worked. On this occasion, however, Queen Sylvia let the accessories tell this story. She pinned the large diamond and emerald cluster brooch, which was originally the heavy belt buckle, to her seraphim sash, anchoring the look with that deep, historic green. It was a masterful choice. The brooch is so substantial that it keeps the sash perfectly in place. You might be wondering, with such a magnificent set, where is the matching tiara? It is the one heartbreaking gap in this collection. The Swedish royals actually did own a grand emerald tiara once, but it left the family long ago through inheritance, and now resides with the Norwegian royal family. So Sylvia has to improvise, often pairing these emeralds with diamonds, just as she did here. And there is one more secret hidden in this look. Look closely at her ears. We have admired these earrings for a few years now, but they are directly connected to that missing necklace. For a long time, the emerald necklace was longer. In the 2000s, it was shortened, and we all wondered where those extra rosettes had gone. Had they been locked away? Lost? No. Queen Sylvia, in her practical wisdom, had those missing links transformed into the very earrings she wore that evening. I find it fascinating. She's wearing earrings that used to be part of a necklace, which used to be part of a king's belt. It shows such a practical, thoughtful approach to heirlooms. Nothing is wasted, everything is adapted. These stones, with that specific inner glow that experts say identifies them as old Colombian emeralds, have witnessed the entire history of the Bernadotte house, and on this night, they looked as vibrant as ever. Leaving the lush green history of the queen behind, we turn our gaze to the crown princess, who brought us a completely different kind of brilliance, sharp, modern, and blindingly bright. If Queen Sylvia's look was about endurance, Crown Princess Victoria's was about power. Against the graphic black and white of that archival Jacques Zender gown, she needed a headpiece that could hold its own, and she chose the absolute perfect partner, the Baden fringe tiara. This is a piece that demands attention. Just look at it. It is often described as a sunray tiara, and you can see why. The diamond fringes broaden as they radiate upwards, interspersed with sharp, slender diamond spikes. To me, it has always possessed a sort of dangerous beauty. It is sleek, geometric, and looks almost like a crown of ice shards. The history of this tiara is incredibly poetic because it connects two Victorias. It came to Sweden back in 1881 in the luggage of Princess Victoria of Baden when she arrived to marry the future King Gustav V. It was a wedding gift from her parents, the Grand Duke and Duchess of Baden. But here is a fascinating detail. On her wedding day, Victoria didn't wear it on her head. She wore it as a necklace. Like many great Victorian jewels, it has a secret mechanism, a spring that can be released to lay the fringes flat or engaged to make them stand upright as a tiara. Over the generations, this piece has become the signature tiara of the Crown Princess. It passed from Queen Victoria to Queen Louise, and then was worn faithfully for decades by the beloved Princess Lillian. In fact, Lillian wore it so often that for years the base was wrapped in gray velvet to match her silver hair. When Victoria began wearing it, the velvet was changed to brown. But for the last 20 years, it has truly belonged to our current Crown Princess. She has worn it to royal weddings, to state banquets, and of course to the Nobels. It is so closely linked to her that when Mattel made a Barbie doll of Victoria back in 2010, this is the tiara they chose to crown her with. Isn't that the ultimate sign of a signature look? Even in miniature plastic, this tiara is instantly recognizable. I find it touching that she chose this specific piece for this occasion. Victoria has admitted in the past that while the tiara is very beautiful and very stylish, it is also a little hard. Yet she wears it with such confidence. To soften that intense wall of diamonds, she made a very clever choice with her other jewels. Instead of adding more diamonds, which might have fought with the tiara, she turned to pearls. She wore antique pearl drop earrings and a lovely 3-row pearl bracelet, tying everything together with a classic diamond and pearl brooch pinned to her dress. The creamy luster of the pearls picked up the white silk of the gown perfectly, balancing the sharp geometry of the tiara with a touch of softness. It was a masterclass in balance. From the blinding white diamonds of the Crown Princess, we drift into the cool, ethereal blue of the winter sky. Princess Meline, standing alongside her brother and husband, looked for all the world like a snow queen who had just stepped in from the Nordic chill. She too embraced the evening's theme of reflection, wearing a cool-toned gray gown by the British designer Jenny Packham. And just like her mother, Meline wore this dress for the King's Golden Jubilee banquet back in 2023. It is a lovely choice, isn't it? The soft gray fabric provides a quiet, misty backdrop that allows her jewelry to take center stage. And what a stage it was! She wore the Swedish aquamarine kokoshnik tiara, a piece that is quite literally a wall of blue ice. This tiara is breathtaking, composed of massive aquamarines set in a delicate diamond trellis. The shape is very distinct. It is a kokoshnik, a style inspired by traditional Russian headdresses, which were incredibly popular in royal circles in the early 20th century. It gives the piece a majestic, upright profile that is unmistakable. It captures the light in a way that is softer than diamonds, but no less intense. But the true beauty of this piece lies in the woman who made it famous, Medeline's grandmother, Princess Sibylla. The story goes that this tiara originally belonged to Margaret of Connaught, the king's grandmother, but it was Princess Sibylla who truly claimed it as her own. After the tragic death of her husband, Prince Gustav Adolf, in a plane crash in 1947, Sibylla was left a widow with 5 young children. As her hair turned white with age and grief, she stopped wearing the gold cameo tiara and turned instead to these cool blue stones. They became her signature, a symbol of her dignity in those later years. Technically, this tiara doesn't even belong to the king or queen. It was inherited by the king's eldest sister, Princess Margaretha, who lives a quiet life in the English countryside. There was a time when we feared it had been sold, as it disappeared from view for years. But then, in a wonderful gesture of family unity, it was revealed that Margaretha keeps the tiara in the Stockholm vaults. She leaves it there so that her nieces can bring it out for grand occasions. It is a lovely arrangement, isn't it? A shared treasure. Meline has worn this piece several times since 2015, and I must say it suits her perfectly. She leaned fully into the icy theme, adding her own diamond and aquamarine girandole earrings and securing her seraphim sash with a small aquamarine brooch. And if you look at her wrist, you might spot another historic gem, Queen Sophia's diamond lattice bracelet. Altogether, it was a look of pure, crystallized elegance. By choosing the Sibylla tiara, she beautifully honored the winter season and the memory of the grandmother she never knew. But our journey through the Blue Hall wouldn't be complete without looking just a little further down the table to a guest who carries a name and a history that connects Sweden to the lost splendors of Imperial Russia. I am speaking, of course, of Countess Bettina Bernadotte. As the president of the Council for the Lindau Nobel laureate meetings, she is a familiar face at these banquets. And for the true jewelry historians among us, her appearance is always a treat, because she brings out a piece we rarely see on anyone else: the Bernadotte Swag Tiara. To match her silver, black, and pink ensemble, Bettina chose this wonderfully distinct headpiece. Unlike the wall of diamonds we saw on the Queen, this tiara has a lighter, almost playful design. It features diamond festoons, or swags, that loop gracefully across the frame, topped with multicolored gemstones in shades of pink, blue, and yellow. It dances in the light rather than demanding it. But the real allure of this tiara isn't just its sparkle. It is the what-if story behind it. The tiara is believed to have been a gift from Prince Wilhelm of Sweden to his daughter-in-law, Countess Karin, back in the 1950s. Now, Prince Wilhelm was the son of Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna of Russia. Here's the poignant part. Had history taken a different turn, had there been no Russian Revolution, the Bernadotte cousins might have been wearing the colossal emeralds of the Romanovs, including Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fedorovna's emerald tiara. Instead, history intervened. Those imperial treasures were lost or scattered, and this swag tiara stands in their place, a survivor of a different kind. It remained in the family through divorces and remarriages, eventually finding its way to Bettina. Seeing it again is a reminder that while empires may fall, family traditions and the jewels that represent them have a way of enduring. The magic of the Nobel festivities does not end when the last toast is drunk at City Hall. In fact, for those of us who adore the deeper, more intricate chapters of royal history, the following evening offers a treat that is perhaps even more special. On December 11th, the king opened the doors of the royal palace for the traditional King's Dinner for the Nobel laureates. The atmosphere here is different, more intimate, set against the Baroque splendor of Karl XI's gallery. It is a moment when the grandeur of the previous night settles into a warm golden glow, and the jewelry choices often reflect this shift, moving from the stark brilliance of diamonds to rich colors and deep imperial history. And who better to embody this imperial legacy than Queen Sylvia? If her look at the ceremony was about the stability of the Bernadotte dynasty, her appearance at the King's Dinner was a direct nod to its French roots. She was a vision in a rosy purple gown by Georg Edarend, a dress we last admired during the Finnish state visit in 2022. It is a bold, joyful color, and it demanded jewelry that could hold its own. Queen Sylvia did not disappoint. She reached into the vaults and brought out the Napoleonic amethyst parure, a suite of jewels that carries the heavy scent of history. Just look at those stones. These are not your average amethysts. They are deep, velvety purple, set in gold and surrounded by diamonds set in silver. They are luscious, aren't they? But their journey to Stockholm is the real story. These gems traveled from the court of Napoleon Bonaparte himself. They were allegedly a wedding gift from Empress Josephine to her daughter-in-law, Princess Augusta of Bavaria, back in 1806. From there, they passed to Queen Josefina of Sweden, bringing a touch of French imperial style to the chilly north. What I love most about seeing Sylvia in this parure is knowing that we are looking at her personal handiwork. You see, for over a century, this wasn't a tiara at all. It was a massive, heavy necklace. So heavy, in fact, that it was rarely worn because it was simply uncomfortable. When Sylvia became queen, she looked at this unwieldy treasure and saw potential. With her characteristic practicality, she had the necklace mounted onto a tiara frame. But she didn't stop there. The necklace she is wearing at the dinner, that is another piece of royal ingenuity. It is actually formed by linking the two broad bracelets from the original set together, with a pendant added from one of the brooches. It is essentially a royal Lego set. It allows her to wear these magnificent historic stones in a way that is modern and comfortable, ensuring that Empress Josephine's legacy isn't just sitting in a velvet box, but is out here, living and breathing under the chandeliers of the royal palace. If Queen Sylvia was a vision in imperial purple, Crown Princess Victoria decided to bring a jolt of electric energy to the room. She stepped out in a gown of vibrant electric fuchsia by Sophia, a dress some of you might remember from the wedding banquet of the Crown Prince of Jordan back in 2023. It is such a bold, modern choice, isn't it? A complete departure from the solemn monochrome of the previous night. To balance this burst of modern color, she reached for perhaps the most romantic and sentimental headpiece in the entire collection. The Connaught Diamond Tiara. This piece is pure delicacy. Instead of heavy walls of diamonds, it features 5 distinct loops forming wreaths of forget-me-nots, with diamond pendants swinging freely inside them. It was a wedding gift in 1905 to Princess Margaret of Connaught from her parents, the Duke and Duchess of Connaught. Because Margaret died so tragically young, this tiara became a cherished heirloom for her children, eventually becoming the signature piece of Princess Sibylla, Victoria's grandmother. For decades, it was known simply as Sibylla's tiara. Victoria once shared a lovely moment about this tiara. She recalled walking past a painting in the palace and suddenly realizing that the woman in the portrait, her great-grandmother Margaret, was wearing the exact same jewels Victoria herself was wearing. She said it was an awakening, a moment when the history became real and tangible. Seeing Victoria wear it feels like a tender nod to the ancestors she never got to meet, both Margaret and her grandmother Sibylla, whose presence is felt in every sparkle of those forget-me-nots. But I want to draw your attention to the brooch pinned to her sash. Have you noticed how fond the Crown Princess has become of this diamond cluster with the milky white stone in the center? It is an opal brooch, and for the last couple of years, it has quietly become one of Victoria's go-to pieces for these grand occasions. It made quite a splash when it reappeared back in late 2023, after being unseen for decades. At the time, it sent historians scrambling through the archives to identify it, and they found that it was a legacy from Grand Duchess Louise of Baden, the mother of Queen Victoria of Sweden. Since that rediscovery, Victoria has clearly fallen in love with it. Opals are quite rare in the Swedish collection, and that soft, shifting iridescence provides a lovely contrast to the sharp brilliance of diamonds. It seems she has given this historic Baden heirloom a permanent place in her rotation. And she didn't stop there with the Baden heritage. On her wrist, she wore the diamond zigzag bracelet, another treasure that originally belonged to Grand Duchess Louise. I love how she assembled this look, wearing a thoroughly modern dress but armoring herself with the heirlooms of her female ancestors. It is a beautiful way to say that while she is a modern woman, she stands firmly on the foundation of the matriarchs who came before her. While Crown Princess Victoria brought the color, Princess Meline brought the drama. She stepped into the gallery looking like she had been gilded, wearing a stunning gown by Monique Lhuillier. With its plunging black velvet bodice and a skirt cascading in gold sequins, she looked perfectly at home amidst the Baroque splendor of the palace. It was a look of high contrast, shadow and light, and she chose a tiara that fits that theme perfectly. In a room filled with diamonds, Meline wore a tiara that doesn't contain a single gemstone. She wore the Napoleonic-cut steel tiara. This is one of the most fascinating pieces in the entire royal collection. You might look at it sparkling fiercely under the chandeliers and assume it is paved with diamonds, but it isn't. It is made of thousands of tiny, highly polished steel studs. It dates back to the early 19th century and Queen Hortense of Holland, the daughter of Empress Josephine. Back then, cut steel was incredibly fashionable and incredibly expensive, but over time it fell out of favor. It features acorns and oak leaves, and the craftsmanship is astounding. But its secret weapon is a technique called en tremblant. Parts of the tiara are mounted on tiny springs, so they tremble and catch the light with every slight movement of the head. In fact, this tiara is the protagonist of one of the greatest lost and found stories in royal history. For over a century, it was missing. It wasn't until 1976, shortly after Queen Sylvia arrived in Sweden, that a court historian named Göran Alm was rummaging through a storage cupboard dedicated to silver and metalware. And there, tucked away in a box, gathering dust, was this tiara. It had likely been put there by a servant who thought that because it wasn't gold or diamonds, it didn't belong in the jewelry vault. Can you imagine finding a Napoleonic treasure in the back of a cupboard? Meline has worn it since last year's dinner, and she pairs it with something truly ancient to soften that industrial edge. Her earrings are the Vasa earrings. These are diamond briolets that date all the way back to the late 18th century, making them likely the oldest jewels worn by anyone that evening. If you look closely, you can see that the diamonds have a slightly irregular, crooked shape. This is because in the 18th century, cutters couldn't force a diamond into a perfect shape like they do today. They had to follow the natural form of the stone. But for Meline, their value isn't just historical. These are the earrings she wore on her wedding day in 2013. I love how she finished the look. A large gold cuff on one wrist and a stack of bracelets on the other, including a diamond tennis bracelet and her Cartier love bracelet. It is a mix of the ancient, the rediscovered, and the modern. Steel, old mine diamonds, and contemporary gold. It is a look that says you can honor the past without being trapped by it. And so, the heavy doors of the Bernadotte vaults close once again, leaving us with these dazzling images. We have traveled from the blinding sun rays of the Baden tiara to the deep imperial purple of the amethyst, and even to the humble steel that manages to outshine diamonds. It wasn't just a display of wealth. It was a lesson in memory. The Swedish royal ladies showed us that true luxury isn't always about the newest thing. Sometimes, it is about honoring the old. Now, I must ask you, if you had the key to that vault for just one night, which piece would you choose? Would you brave the weight of Queen Sophia's massive tiara for its brilliance? Or perhaps you are drawn to the mystery of the steel tiara, or the romance of Victoria's forget-me-nots. And tell me, how do you feel about this trend of re-wearing historic gowns? Does it make the glamour feel more meaningful to you? If you enjoyed this journey into the archives, please leave a like. It helps our community of history lovers find each other. And if you haven't already, do subscribe and ring that bell. There are many more locked vaults in Europe waiting for us to open them. Until next time.